We all want to achieve growth. We want to achieve a life of success and a life of being fully charged. Last year on my birthday, I branded my upcoming year because that's what you do when you are a marketer. My slogan, if you will, was called Fully Charged. The subheader was do what it takes to live with all bars on green. All bars on green is really just indicative of your cell phone. That top right corner, for me, by noon, my battery starts to leak and is pretty much down to one little sliver of red. And I was wondering to myself, what if I had a similar visual for my internal energy tank? I found myself that year prior, I was just often running around with one little tiny bar of red and trying to get through the whole day, but didn't have a lot to give because my energy was just not there. That's physical energy, that's emotional energy. And so as I was envisioning my year ahead, I thought, what would it look like to live with all of my bars on green, to show up to life fully charged? Of course, I had to figure out what would it take? What would it require for me to show up with all of my bars on green? That was a great vision, but it's easier said than done. And I quickly started running into issues that would prevent me, that had been preventing showing up with all my bars on green. So habits, but more so energy leakers, energy takers. What were the people, the habits, the behaviors that were taking that energy away from me? And why was it draining so much and so often? So I ran into a few problems on the way of trying to achieve this vision in this coming year as it started to play out. The first one was I love to say yes. I would be overcommitted and then not have the energy to really even fulfill the things I had said yes to. So I had to start being committed to not being overcommitted. That was the first step in the process. And then the second thing is I self-sabotage in some ways. When I feel like my tank's full and things are good, because of just life and the way that it goes and, grief and different things that had accumulated in my heart, I found myself not being able to enjoy that feeling of having a full tank when it was there or being fully charged. And so I would kind of start to self-sabotage in certain ways. And so I had to solve that issue. And then the third one was really, I didn't have clear values that would help me decide what to say yes to and what to say no to. And so a lot of that year ahead started to play out in that I had to get really clear about what I was going to remove from my life that was taking energy, and then to define what my values were so that I could be able to have a rubric to say yes, to say no, and to understand what was informing those decisions, choosing to show up for myself. And that self-sabotage, bad behavior, kind of figuring that out and really being aware of that habit and then starting to make changes accordingly. In this episode, I really want to ask you, what does it look like for you to live your life with all bars on green? And what's it going to take to do that? And so I'm going to share some of the ways and some of the things, the habits, the patterns that I've started to cultivate in my life that have allowed me to show up with all bars on green. So I talked about my birthday. That was 2 birthdays ago. And so I got to live a whole full year after that, kind of do the trial and error of actually starting to move in that direction and what roadblocks I bumped into. And now I feel like I'm in this new year after that, the second year, and I'm actually getting to enjoy the feeling of showing up fully charged, all bars on green. People don't necessarily believe that they're able to actually achieve that feeling or achieve that reality for them, showing up with energy, physically, emotionally, mentally. It's like, why try? Quit before we start, right? Like we don't even necessarily try because we don't know that it's really truly possible to pursue that and to achieve that feeling. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the habits and the mind shifts that have happened to me that I've chosen, if you will, along this journey. And I think some of them are going to be helpful for you because we are side by side. I'm on this side of the screen and you're watching. I do believe that we all want to achieve growth and that we want to achieve a life of success and a life of being fully charged. These things are what have worked for me. And I know that you have your list of what's worked for you, what you're trying. And it's more trial and error, isn't it? Because each season comes and each season goes. And sometimes what worked last time in the last season isn't going to work in this next season. So I just wanted to share some of these things that I'm calling it how to win the day, how to show up and win the day and build a plan for yourself of health so that you can see the fruit of that growth. growth in your life. So one thing is decide how you want to feel and then make a work back plan. If you have a meeting with your boss or if you have a big pitch, if you will, I'm in marketing, so we have a lot of pitches, like think Mad Men, where you have to show up, you got the whole team, and now it's on Zoom, but it used to be in person where you show up locked and loaded and everybody had to be on their game. It's basically a performance where you're trying to win this new business. So imagine that at Monday morning, 8 a.m., you have a big pitch. And what I do is I envision how I want to feel during that pitch. So I want to feel clear-minded. I want to feel energetic. I want to feel calm. I want to feel confident. I want to feel clean. I want to feel well-dressed, well-fed. All of those feelings don't just happen. It takes days for me of preparation to even walk into that meeting and be ready. Some of those things I want to zoom in a little bit with you and tell you how I think about it. And hopefully it'll spark some inspiration for you in developing that work back plan, if you will. For me, a work back plan the week before leading up to a meeting like that might be making sure that what I'm eating is pretty much limited sugar, not a lot of heavy carbs, do want a lot of healthy fat to make me feel full and satisfied and get all of those good hormones going. It might look like, even from a technology standpoint, getting my space set up, even Friday or Saturday leading up to that big meeting, getting my meeting space set up in my home. I work in my basement. What you don't want to do is wait until 7 a.m. or 7:30 on Monday morning to start to figure out your office setup and check the Wi-Fi, check the camera, check your mic, check all of the stage that you need to have and to come prepared to that Zoom meeting. And so there's a couple pieces. There's your physical health. How do you want to feel? What things do you need to be eating? What kind of sleep do you need to get leading up to that meeting? What kind of physical activity do you need to have? And then also just the practical things, the technology, the agenda, all of the details that need to come together. Just planning further ahead and taking it in bite sizes is really how it's going to work for me for sure, because I have 3 young kids. Ideally, I could just go sit in the spa all weekend leading up to that Monday morning meeting, but that's not going to happen. So much of my success is taking full advantage of the fringe hours and making the most out of tiny little incremental moments and these tiny little steps so that by Monday morning, I am able to show up strong, show up fully charged, show up well-dressed. And it's not always the case. It's not always the case that I am able to feel all of those things, but I at least work towards it. And you can as well. And it is achievable because it moves your energy forward towards how do you want to feel and then making that work back plan. Dr. Melanie McNally is a friend of mine. She's a part of a group that I'm in called Renegade. And she talks a lot as a clinical psychologist about your brain health and your performance goals that you want to achieve and how to make your brain work and to achieve those performance goals and really how to own your day and how to win in life and to show up. And so she just recently shared about a book that she finished writing and how she had to prepare her environment each day before she showed up to do her writing. For me, that resonates a lot because I'm often on calls, Zoom calls. I work out of my basement. And so to show up to that Zoom call prepared, calm and dressed and ready takes a lot of effort leading up to that. And so even just hearing her talk about the steps that she takes, she leaves her notebook out the day before with a pen that's open sitting on the desk so that when she shows up, her environment is prepared and there's just an open space for her to be able to start to create. The last thing would be rebranding self-care. Self-care is a term that I hear often, you hear often. And honestly, it sometimes makes me feel guilt. And my life is busy and full. And I think, oh, I should be doing more or I should be prioritizing myself. But I started to realize that my full-time job is to take care of myself. And then everything else, all of the other things that I want to be a part of or that I have in my life, if it's family or if it's extracurricular activities or anything, even work, these are all priorities that fall in line after the top priority, which is my full-time job is to care for myself. And so I don't need to apologize for taking care of myself. I don't need to apologize for going for a run in the middle of the day sometimes or rearranging my schedule, saying no to things to put my own care at the top. So I would say to you as well, it's just interesting how we perceive self-care to be like a luxury, but it's not a luxury. It's the core work that we have to do to care for ourselves. I would say that we can't can't show up to anything. We can't show up to work. We can't show up to our family, or can't show up to ourselves without putting that at the top of your to-do list. So I just want to shift that perspective for you and for me to continue seeing self-care is not a line item in the budget, but as the entire budget. It is the entire commitment of our life to care for ourselves so that we can then show up for others out of that abundance, if you will. Regardless of what you do with your work days or with your life, we can all benefit from articulating what we want and then making a plan and working backwards to achieve that. And I want to just invite you today to consider my posture. Am I just kind of viewing life as it's happening to me and there's not much I can control? And so therefore I'm just going to show up with a half tank and go with it? Or am I really leaning forward and asking myself, what would my life look like to show up fully charged, all bars on green? How transformative would that be? And then what do I need to be doing to work back and plan accordingly and put in those healthy inputs that will lead to growth? Health breeds growth. We often chase growth because those visible signs of growth are what we're after. But in order to achieve growth, we have to back up and prioritize health, the disciplines, the healthy disciplines and those inputs every single day that will then lead to those visible public signs of growth. If it's revenue, if it's energy, whatever it is, it takes those little tiny inputs every day that then will produce growth over time.